May God bless us with discomfort at easy answers, half truths and superficial realities, so that we may live deep within our hearts. May God bless us with anger at oppression, injustice, and exploitation of people, so that we may work for justice, freedom, and peace. And may God bless us with enough foolishness to believe that we can make a difference in the world, so that we can do what others say cannot be done. Thank you so much for having me. Everyone who worked to get me here, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and you've been so hospitable and so kind to have me. Everyone looks so cute out here, you know. Nice work. Way to show up, guys. No, but I'm afraid to tell you that I don't have snacks or spa things. I wasn't told. You threw me under the bus with that one, Brad. I didn't know. So you'll just have to deal with what I've brought. And you get credit for this, right? So you can at least get that, get that in the box. But I guess if you want a snack, you can see me later. I have some peanuts in my bag. I was asked to speak on faith and creativity, which is kind of my wheelhouse, at least a little bit. And I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do that not necessarily in a way that people might expect. I'm not going to tell you about how to be creative and faithful at the same time, or whatever. You can get the book if you want to learn that. That's a way to go in there. But what I'm going to do is kind of give you an act of creativity. Thanks. I'm going to fiddle with it. Yeah, can you? Yeah, thank you. I'm going to give you an act of creativity. It's an sweet. It's an offering that asks you what you're doing to add to the world, which is what creativity is. So I've titled the sermon that I'm going to give this morning, Haibun in the Order of St. Jude. There's a lot of words in there that people are kind of like, what? So Haibun, a Japanese form of poetry. It's intermingled poetry and prose together. So what you're going to hear is, in fact, intermingled poetry and prose. When I'm reading a poem, I'm going to hold up my hand, okay? And you should know that St. Jude is my favorite saint, patron saint of, anyone know? Huh? Yeah, hopeless or lost causes. Yeah, that's right. Often represented holding a giant club or walking stick with a flame over his head to be a beacon for those lost causes. Writing about the absurdity of violence and the necessity of peace in the midst of impending war, Thomas Merton, who's a monk from the Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky, and a sort of a character of very serious spiritual importance to me, wrote an essay saying that the only sane course that remains is to work frankly and without compromise for the complete and total abolition of war. It's a heavy command, and it comes from a man who lived a life of unwavering commitment to peace, contemplation, solitude, and stillness, so we can trust what he says. I believe in very few things with my whole heart, but one thing that I do believe, and I know I believe it, is that God is a God who champions, desires, hope for, and loves most deeply the smallnesses of our world. From individuals to created things, God inhabits most truly in the little beauties, tiny details, and forgotten cores of each riven piece of creation. The small things matter to God. But I want to know, what can one small person do? What can one small person be? And what can one small person actually make in the world? And can a small difference actually make a difference at all? To drop in the bucket. I will not swear an oath. not to anyone. I refuse to swear an oath because I would be enlisted into a power struggle whereby the authority to which I pledged my loyalty could create an inequality between myself and those outside of that authority. I don't believe all authority to be evil, of course, but I do believe it to be often unintentionally corrosive over time, especially if it's left unchecked. More likely than a legitimate struggle for power, that authority to which I've sworn would eventually disregard an ideal or principle which I value personally, or, as is often the case, didn't know I actually valued in the first place. This kind of promise to an allegiance is a violation and distortion, I've decided, for me, of my God-given voice, of the workmanship, the poema, that I am God's poem, that workmanship that is being done in me. I made this decision after several years ago, and have not sworn an oath since, not to an individual, entity, country, anyone. I don't expect everyone to understand. I resolved myself to this position after I was invited to join a secret fraternity in college. College a lot like Trinity, actually. A friend who formed this group made it clear that it was a brotherhood, that he gathered together of people he deemed worthy for deep community, deep friendship. Looking back on the whole thing, I'm almost certain that I was asked into the group a few weeks after its official formation, because I noticed that something was happening on the floor behind the backs of all of us who were not part of this secret fraternity. There was a ceremony in the woods where we said vows. We were given different names. We exchanged swords. Yeah, I'm serious. But see, this is what's funny about it, right? It rings kind of familiar to you, doesn't it, gentlemen? Mm-hmm. These swords were gifts for each other, chosen especially for our brothers in arms, whatever that might mean to a handful of college guys who were battle-obsessed but had no real battle to actually fight. Eventually, a few people in that fraternity began treating others outside of it in ways that I felt were far less than compassionate. So my decision to excuse myself from the group and, in fact, the college became easier to make. I realized that, at least in this case, promises made under some pretentious loyalty to someone or something can often spoil over time. And then choices have to be made, and I made mine. My smallness can be given to bigness, of course, but when it is, often a value is lost, I think. Here we are. Here we become a likeness, the same, reborn again together. At the table, we come with open hands, and everybody receives a handout. I believe each person's faith is his or her own, and it's not mine to judge, jeopardize, or undermine, and I hope that that courtesy will be given to me with what I'm going to say today. I'm of the increasing conviction that I shouldn't give my voice away to others, especially if they will use it against other people, speak for me, or demarcate boundaries that disallow people to enter into deeper community with one another, into deeper love with one another. The country in which I live, the United States, allows me, and allows all of us, a voice in the community, right? And for that I am quite grateful. But community building and community making aren't quite the same. And I'm much more interested in the former and not the latter. I know that there are flags in the world that have no wind in which to flap, where there is no breeze bellowing to make them move. Pledging allegiance to our flag and casting ballots for officials are acts of empowerment and symbolism that bring us to the acknowledgement of the freedoms and opportunities afforded to us. We remember and rehearse our stake in the decision-making. I understand the implications of free voices in our socio-political landscape. At least I do well enough. Monarch rests. Granite hands holding prayers. Mary sings, "Children, be at peace." We're all wandering home together, saved by voices we'll never quite hear. Because my voice means something, because your voice means something, this decision has permeated all the pieces of my life, political, proprietary, personal. I've recently made a hard decision about this. Here's a political one. I will not vote again until a presidential candidate comes forward, standing firmly on and speaking publicly in favor of an unshakable commitment to nonviolence, unwavering peacemaking through non-aggression, or civil but evident belief in the power of pacifism. And in such a climate as ours, to make such a statement as a politician and to back it up with the action to support it is more than likely a political suicide. And I understand that this means I probably won't be voting anytime soon. But I hope that that changes. We live in an age of media saturation, of talking heads, of cowboy commanders, and pay-it-forward Peace Prize winners. None of these things can provide us with the clarity of vision we need to make choices in favor of making peace. The voice that leads my country must risk his or her career in a stand against war, as I will risk myself in small ways. And my small voice is the only one, my small voice is only heard when I'm next to an individual who needs me. When I'm walking alongside a small person that God so loved, in a world that God so loves. In that world, what can actually be lost? It should be said that this decision was not made glibly. And to some, even those who love me very deeply, and I love them, my wife, for example, is unreasonable, prodigal, and foolish. But I've been trying something new in my life the past few years, earnestly seeking. And it has taken me my entire adult life to come to this decision about civil exercise and personal practice. The necessity for my fidelity to making peace over the use of my political or personal voice is an answer to years of deep churning irascibility, which turned to confusion and doubt, which crawled into chaotic anxiety, which modulated into an erratic anger that simmered just below the surface of my daily interactions with everyone. I've been living one step away from violence, serious violence, most of my life, and have walked up to the line many, many times and done so shamefully in front of people I love and strangers alike. The time I came closest was when I almost hit my son, right in the face. It was then I realized I needed to change or I would boil over. So I'm trying every day to be still and know, to put peace into the world by making some small contribution to it, to stop this little war that I have living in me from moving outside of me. Make no mistake, you have one too. I'm trying to understand my own life and the lives of others in earnest, so I can see no other way right now but to reach outward. Not through a system so much as by doing good, which, it should be noted, is different than being good. This is my vocation. This is my voice, voce. Worn rags, holiness, the still small voice beginning as a shallow sigh. Rusted tin birdhouse, sweet sad branches reach down our little heavens. Each morning, I sit with my children or I sit alone, and I write down my life. I've not come by this lightly and have made it from a simple idea that I'm a citizen of our world, living in a country that happens to allow me the freedom of voice, and most importantly, I'm a citizen of an earth that God has already redeemed. An earth that God made and so loved that redeeming it was an elegant act of suicide, radical revision, and a wild reaching out toward us. A life of conciliatory truth-telling, and then an allowance of an act of violence against himself that was meant to be enough violence for each of us. My children and I sketch and scratch pictures, poems, little things, small monuments that will never be seen by anyone but me and them. They're hidden away in journals or given to people that we love most. Ask it. How do I become more than what I am? Seeds never question. Hear none of this as enduring certainty. I'm trying to work these ideas out with fear and trembling, maintaining the integrity of the voice I've been given. And even as I stand and say these words, I see the little lives that we have acted out. As I wrote these words, I watched these little lives. Motion after motion. Leaves turned reddened more than they were the day before. 2 squirrels bustled in an unkempt garden and gathered up stores. A line of ants trekked as a singular being down the wrought iron banister. Men in orange vests mended a fence across the street, paved a new sidewalk in the park, all the while balancing cigarettes between their lips. As true professionals. The world goes forward pretty well without me and pretty well without you. Be sure to hear that right, though. It isn't some statement of existential imprisonment, but of content abiding. The wars in my front yard and your front yard aren't so evident at first glance, but they are there. Those trees are giving up their leaves so that they can survive a winter. The animals are gathering to survive, and the men, like me, fight their own darknesses, or maybe they don't fight them at all, and they live in them. And these cycles are unending, infinitely varied, compulsory. The struggle of our commonness is defined and sketched in them. But how we handle struggle often defines how others might live, and how we handle it best is in the small losing and finding of God in us. My life's grief is minimal by comparison to almost any other individual. I will readily say it. But this doesn't preclude me from responsibility and from using my voice creatively. Perhaps it even demands more. I'm growing more aware of what I am. I'm attentive to my affluences, my comforts, and how those things shape and affect my voice. And now I'm trying to give and let go as much as I can. Maybe the definition of war should be expanded so that we actually feel obligated to do something. We have trouble seeing that wars begin inside us, don't we? And they move outward from there. They're tied up in our own vanity. These violences are imperceptible because we don't want to look within. We have a lot of good ways of distracting ourselves from that. And we grow so disgusted with ourselves that we ignore the inside. It's hard to look at. Avarice, rage, lust, dejection, ignorance, laziness. All these can live in us. And these small injustices inside, or what we think are small injustices inside, the ones that we keep private or hidden or irrelevant, order the injustices outside, don't they? They help the injustices ripen into serious, rampant violences. The exploitation of people, state-sanctioned killing, and the perpetuation of all kinds of disparity, or simply a blind eye toward all those things. We supplant peace by refusing internal responsibility and external action. We lapse in failing to realize the humanity of others by failing to realize our own humanity. And instead of choosing the string of heavens that are breadcrumbed before us, we'd almost always rather follow our vanities into another hell. But we are not lost. Long view, horizon. No still leaves, wide high wire light, web bowing in trees. Scuttle on tin roof, acorn rolls into briars, safe to begin growing. I'm learning how to live in this world by listening. Sometimes I hear it. I'm learning how to be in this world by seeing. Sometimes things are clear. I'm learning how to love this world by reaching into it, and every time I do, my hands get filthy. It's awful. But most of all, it's awful. It's very hard. But most of all, I'm learning how to worship in this world by sacrifice. Sometimes I let go of my security I hold so dear. And I wonder, am I getting any of it right? Last year, we dug a family garden for the first time. We began composting, tried to make something grow in our own backyard. My daughter and son have picked, potted, and plucked, cooked with us, brought bounties of veggies and fruit to others. We made and gave together, hands large and small, in the same earth, picking the same weeds, asking the same questions about when we might expect okra or an artichoke, or how we'll know when the carrots are actually ready to be pulled. Sometimes I'd walk outside and the kids would be in the backyard eating tomatoes off the vine and laughing together, just sitting there. I guess those were small ways that we stood for peace. We gave and grew. We made and mended. We sang and we shared. And I go to bed some nights feeling like I did a decent job, but I'm never certain of it. Certainty aside, what does it actually change? Fall ball in the park, cricket swells, white stars, frayed cloth, handed back home. Autumn's blue hours, gray light, dusk, airy whispers. Snow will come in months. If I have to, I will stand alone and I will say it plain. I will not make war. And I can't lend my little life or language to anyone who's content with seeing war in any form as a necessary evil. So I give up my voice in our system and give up my voice to others to maintain the integrity of my ability to choose peace and seek clearly, not out of piety or pity, not out of anger or apathy, but because forgiveness, compassion, and reconciliation are graces easy to imagine but hard to act out, and we almost always ask for them without wanting to give of ourselves. Because these graces have come already, they are here. The kingdom at hand is here, not in an impending apocalyptic ferocity, but in the still, small noticing of the world in which you live and I live every day. I see you. I hear you. I see us. I hear us. I'm trying to learn how to love you, and I'm trying to learn how to love myself. That's the message. This is what my senses discern. This is really the best way I know how to say anything at all. Snow turning over, haggard bricks, soot rising up, blown leaves echoing off. Rose bushes, bare, still thorns send messages into winter. We endure. The question isn't, what will I preserve, but what will be left undisturbed? Wars, militaries, presidents, legislators, The world's principalities, promises, powers, and possessions are not our only vanguards for freedom and for peace. They're one way of maintaining peace for a fraction of the world. They're custodians of policies and agendas, sentinels of supremacy and sovereignty. They aren't always bad, they aren't always good, and their authority and motivations are at best unknowable. Will you be okay with what they'll say when they speak for you? What exactly will they say? How exactly will they say it? Cindered winter air, gray storms, groaning a belief. Who will listen? Who will see? To sink and rise up, jay swoops over dead grass and clover, but the sun comes back again. In 2012, my state, Kentucky, won a basketball championship. Some of you might remember. Maybe what you didn't see or hear about, well, I can't imagine that you didn't, was that people rioted in the streets of Lexington the night that they won. Literally rioted. Set couches and overturned cars. Set couches on fire and overturned cars. This is celebration for victory. What are the voice-stripped people in oppressed countries supposed to do when their friends and families are being raped, dismembered, abducted, subjugated, disenfranchised, exploited, or executed? We just won a basketball game. They're going to have to scream louder, set larger fires, erupt with more vehemence and rage against their empires. How will they have to get our attention so that we see them? How will they celebrate if they win their war? When our voices and language lose their meaningful timbre, imagination and hope wither, slow and almost without notice. This is the landscape from which we yearn for freedom. This is the landscape in which we currently live. If you were to name the awe and lament of this world, how would you go about it? How could you do it? What would you give up so that people might listen? What would you see? What would you say? People say all kinds of things, but words aren't the requirement for believing, for salvation, or for washing anything white. What color is the flag that you're holding? What if you held no flag at all? What if you waved an empty and open hand, or held it up as offering? What if you could lose your flag and find your way? Because peacemaking is a practice that we haven't fully committed to trying as believers. It's an untested opportunity, and one that demands serious consideration. Some people will call me naive and dreamer and all this. I get that. That's fine. But I believe it to be nonsense. Since waging war has never once, in any place across space and time, brought any lasting sense of concord, belief in its power, especially in the face of such overwhelming failure, is an idealistic, reckless, and sentimental illusion. Continuing to fight is a romantic assertion of and vote for those words that will eventually end in our crumbling together. So I refuse to be an enemy to anyone. And I won't give my voice to anyone whose commitment isn't the same. I don't expect this to work quickly. The process of cultivating peace is deliberate and attentive. One that shouldn't be disregarded because it doesn't yield fast fruit like everything else in our culture. Patient and watch. Aspen pine lurches, long arms, arthritic fingers, once a seed, so we were. Breeze and morning cold, nothing's ever lost in lungs. Frost burns to dew and shines. What will you lay down that brings war into this world? Your money, your weapons, your time, your home, your maps, your plans, your ideals, your land? What should you abstain from so we might feel the weight of your silence? Could the hole you make be small and profound enough that we might actually fall into it? Will you let someone else have the smallness that God has made in you? That square in which you stand, the one where you speak to convince or retort or berate or aggress, could be freighted with your silence. How can you offer your voice, its slight significance, its minor meaning, that might begin peace in someone else? This is what I have to offer you right now. This page, the white space, the words, that makes my voice heard enough. And if you cannot hear it, listen hard. And if you can, what am I saying right now? Chimes and wind together, broken music, my life breathed in. This is how I sing. Paper, pen, window, slow ivy covers the saint and his club, world blooming. Peace to everyone. God bless.